On May 24th, 2022, a quiet, close-knit community in Uvalde, Texas, was forever changed. At approximately 11:30 a.m., the peaceful atmosphere of Robb Elementary School was shattered when an 18-year-old gunman, Salvador Ramos, entered the school with an assault rifle and opened fire. In a matter of minutes, a horrifying act of violence would claim the lives of 21 innocent people, 19 young children and 2 teachers, leaving families, a community, and a nation reeling in shock and sorrow. The shooting, which would later be described as one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history, has since become a somber symbol of the ongoing epidemic of mass shootings that plague the country. The loss of so many young lives, paired with the slow and ineffective police response, ignited debates on school safety, gun control laws, and law enforcement protocols across the nation. As we take a closer look at the events surrounding the Uvalde school shooting, we will examine not just the tragedy itself, but the chain of circumstances that led to it, the response to the crisis, and the ongoing aftermath that has shaped the town of Uvalde and sparked nationwide discussions. The path that led to the devastating shooting at Robb Elementary School did not begin that fateful day, but instead was the result of years of troubling behavior and warning signs that were either ignored or went unnoticed. Salvador Ramos, an 18-year-old high school senior from Uvalde, had lived a life marked by isolation, troubling behavior, and a growing obsession with violence. Growing up in Uvalde, Salvador was known to be a somewhat quiet and reclusive individual. He had an estranged relationship with his family, particularly his mother, and struggled socially. Although he had been a student at Uvalde High School, he didn't have many friends and was often seen as an outcast. According to those who knew him, Salvador was often taunted and bullied, and this may have fueled a deep sense of anger and resentment. In the months leading up to the tragedy, Salvador's behavior became increasingly concerning. He frequently posted on social media about his plans, often detailing his violent fantasies, and even posting photos of the firearms he had obtained. His social media accounts showed disturbing signs of what was to come, with posts that hinted at his desires to inflict harm. But what is truly haunting is that these red flags were visible to the public long before the attack. Ramos had legally purchased 2 semi-automatic rifles shortly after turning 18, a legal age to purchase such firearms in the United States. Despite his lack of a criminal record and the apparent absence of any formal investigation into his threats, Ramos had access to powerful weaponry that would later be used to carry out the attack. The purchase of these weapons was a key moment in the timeline, as it was the precursor to the unimaginable violence that followed. On the morning of May 24th, 2022, Ramos had already set his tragic plan into motion. After a brief altercation with his grandmother, he shot her in the face before driving toward Robb Elementary School, a school he had once attended. He was armed with an AR-15 style rifle and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, ready to unleash chaos on the unsuspecting school. Around 11:30 a.m., Ramos crashed his vehicle near the school and began his assault. He quickly approached the school's exterior and began firing shots into the air before entering through an open door. Once inside, he began shooting at teachers and children, moving through hallways and classrooms in a deadly rampage. The first responders arrived on the scene within minutes of the first shots being fired, but the situation was far from under control. Ramos had barricaded himself in a classroom with his victims, and despite the efforts of law enforcement to gain entry, the wait to neutralize the gunman was agonizingly long. As law enforcement officers and SWAT teams arrived, they were met with uncertainty and confusion about the best course of action. The delay in entering the classroom became a key point of contention, as the lives of the students and teachers inside hung in the balance. After more than an hour of failed attempts to break through the barricade, tactical units finally breached the classroom and killed Ramos. By the time Ramos was neutralized, 21 people were dead and many more were injured. The victims were mostly children, ranging from 9 to 11 years old, all in their classrooms when the gunman launched his attack. The attack at Robb Elementary School left an indelible mark on Uvalde and the wider world. The lives lost were young and full of potential. 19 children, ranging in age from 9 to 11, along with 2 beloved teachers, Eva Mireles and Irma Garcia, who were dedicated educators, known for their kindness and commitment to their students. The emotional and psychological impact on the families of the victims is immeasurable. In the aftermath, the town of Uvalde found itself in mourning, with community members coming together to support the grieving families and honor the lives lost. Vigils, memorial services, and funerals were held across the town, with local residents pouring out their support. The attack also left many others physically and emotionally scarred, as numerous children and teachers were injured during the shooting. The survivors of the shooting have had to live with the trauma of having witnessed such violence at a young age. Many struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, while others continue to deal with the profound grief of losing their peers and educators in such a violent manner. The tragedy was felt far beyond Uvalde, with an outpouring of grief and solidarity from across the nation. The community, which had once been close-knit and safe, was now fractured by grief and fear. But amidst this pain, there were also stories of heroism. Teachers and staff members put their lives on the line to protect the children, shielding them in classrooms or helping them escape through windows. Their bravery became a testament to the selflessness and dedication that many educators show daily, even when faced with the unthinkable. One of the most contentious aspects of the Uvalde shooting was the response from law enforcement. While the police arrived within minutes of the initial 911 calls, they failed to act swiftly in confronting Ramos, which led to harsh criticism from both the public and experts on law enforcement protocols.
After the first round of videos was released in August, a Uvalde officer came forward and said that he believed some were missing. That sparked a department-wide audit, and that's how the rest of these videos came about, almost 50 in total. We looked through all of them today, and here's what we found.
We gotta get him out as fast as possible.
Both inside and outside Robb Elementary, a closer look at the delayed police response.
Stand by, they got SWAT on their way.
And overwhelming emotions from police officers.
I know it's just bad, like, I just never thought like that would happen here.
It took almost 400 officers 77 minutes to breach those classroom doors. That moment and the aftermath redacted in these videos, but the impact is clear.
The initial response from law enforcement was disorganized, with officers hesitant to enter the classroom where Ramos was barricaded. Many were unclear about the severity of the situation, and some were even seen waiting outside while the gunfire continued inside the school. This delay in neutralizing the threat allowed Ramos to continue his rampage and further harmed the victims inside. After the attack, investigations revealed that there had been multiple opportunities for law enforcement to act sooner. The delay in breaching the classroom, in particular, was a major failure in the chain of events. The inaction of law enforcement was blamed for the deaths of the victims, and the police chief of Uvalde was heavily criticized for his leadership during the crisis. The Uvalde school shooting is a haunting reminder of the ongoing issue of gun violence in the United States, as well as the broader questions surrounding the safety of schools and the mental health of individuals who commit such horrific acts. Salvador Ramos's actions on May 24, 2022, left an entire community grieving and a nation once again questioning how such tragedies can be prevented in the future. As we remember the victims of Robb Elementary School, 19 innocent children and 2 dedicated teachers, we are reminded of the importance of addressing both the societal and institutional issues that contribute to mass shootings. The tragedy of Uvalde will not be forgotten, and the call for reform continues. The question remains, when will America take the necessary steps to ensure that this tragedy is never repeated?
18 students and teachers on the screen right now. Hard to see 2 years later. Look at those faces. Well, 2 years later, still, the families are fighting for accountability while mourning the tragic losses. And no one has faced criminal charges for the shooting.
We need them to come out and say, look, we failed. We failed. And we're going to do what is right moving forward.
A video from Robb Elementary shows on the day of the shooting, it took officers 77 minutes to enter the classroom where the shooter barricaded himself in with those little boys and little girls and their teachers. Officers were on the other side of the door. They were just waiting for directions.
There's compelling evidence that the law enforcement response to the attack at Robb Elementary was an abject failure.
That's Texas Department of Public Safety Director Steve McCraw. Multiple investigations after the shooting found fault in the inaction of troopers and officers during the shooting. Before results were released, McCraw says that he would resign, or said he would resign from his position if fault was found. He never did. A grand jury is currently considering whether any of the close to 400 federal, state, and local law enforcement officers should be criminally charged in the shooting. It is a 5:05, taking a live look at the U.S. Capitol. After the shooting, federal lawmakers got to work on some gun reforms. Congress advanced a new measure that enhances background checks for anyone under 21 trying to buy a gun, prevents people convicted of domestic violence from owning guns, and provides federal money for gun violence prevention programs, for school security, and for mental health. However, the package fell short of what President Joe Biden wanted, which was a ban on assault-type weapons. Now, it was the first gun reform in decades. U.S. Senator from Texas, John Cornyn, was one of the lawmakers behind the bipartisan law.
I don't believe in doing nothing in the face of what we saw in Uvalde and we've seen in far too many communities.
Well, Senator Ted Cruz did not vote to pass the measure. Instead, he introduced his own unsuccessful law that required armed guards at schools. In our next half hour, we're going to go over what Texas lawmakers have done since the shooting. And today, families of victims and survivors will take part in a candlelight vigil in Uvalde to remember these 21 people. Texas State Senator Roland Gutierrez plans to be there. And remember, last year, he introduced 21 bills aimed to reduce gun violence. None of them were even heard in the Senate.